Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.
I try so hard not to, but I don't think there's any way not to, because Star Wars has been a part of my life for 45 years. It's like a family holiday. Like, I know Thanksgiving's going to have political conversation that I don't want to have. It's going to get weird.
Hello there. This is Dave, and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You, the show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars. From industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars, and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. Now, I've always loved hearing people's passionate points of view on Star Wars because, for me, it reveals new ways of looking at the franchise. Also, let's just face it, it's fun to talk Star Wars. My guest today is no stranger to the Star Wars galaxy. In the mid-90s, he was a freelance writer covering toys and collectibles, unique fan stories, and New York area Star Wars movie premieres. You may have even collected some of his work for Topps Star Wars Galaxy and Star Wars Insider magazine. He wrote a full-length fan fiction novelization of the Phantom Menace called Duel of the Fates, which you can download online, and he's an accomplished voiceover artist and can be heard weekly on the podcasts Around the Galaxy and Force Connect. Let's give a warm hello there to Pete Fletzer.
Hey, hello there. How are you?
I'm well. Tell me, Pete, are you ready to share with the world what Star Wars means to you?
I absolutely am. And I'll share with anybody who will listen. I love it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I think with your show, like, you're ready weekly.
Yeah, I am. I probably share too much, quite honestly, but I love it. It's great.
This is gonna be What Does Star Wars Mean to Pete Fletzer, the redacted version. We're just not gonna reveal anything.
Right. This will be. You can listen. I'll come in and I'll start with it. If you want to learn about me, listen to my show. Well, I'm done. Yeah. Let's go. No, not at all, man. I talk to strangers on the street about Star Wars if they'll do it. So. But I'm excited that you reached out. I'm excited to talk to you and share whatever you want to talk about, man.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited for this too. As a new Star Wars podcast, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about the fandom, about your experience. But first, I should start with 5 with the Force.
Let's do it.
This is just a standard set of 5 questions that I ask all my guests. So, which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
I'm going to give you a more complicated answer than you expected. I would normally say The Empire Strikes Back because it's my favorite Star Wars movie. But for some reason, over the last couple of years, if I'm just going to throw in a Star Wars movie, it's Phantom Menace.
Why the Phantom Menace?
I mean, and I'm sure we'll get to it when we talk a little bit about what Star Wars means to me, but Phantom Menace used to be my least favorite Star Wars movie. And now it's really... It was when I wrote the fan fiction novelization of it. It had it changed my perception of it. The Star Wars stories we've gotten since 1999, when it first came out, have changed my perception of the entire prequel trilogy. It's just a fun movie. It's like 2 hours of just fun. It's not heady. It's fun, and it's got my favorite villain, Darth Maul, in it. So
yeah. Yes, and we will talk more about that. Question number 2. Oh, I need a 1d6 for this. Anytime I can get a 1d6 into a show, I'm there. I got 1. Oh, that's good. What or who is your favorite major character?
Oh, favorite major character. I'm not going to ask you to define major. I'll come in with my own definition. I would say probably Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've never really thought about it, but I like what he represents as a Jedi, as what Star Wars is, everything from Alec Guinness's play to what we got in the Kenobi series. I think he's he was so much more humanized as a result of the recent content that he's, if I had to pick of the major players, he'd probably be the one.
It's interesting. So he's also one of those characters that we see quite a bit of his life on screen.
Yeah. More so even than Vader, I think. I mean, we saw a lot of Anakin, of course, but I don't know. I think that maybe not more than Vader, but it's interesting. And one of my favorite things about Alec Guinness's portrayal is he gave to me the best accidental line delivery ever. The best accidental line because when Luke says, "Dude," he claims to be the property of an Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he pauses and he looks back and he's taken back and he settles in and he says, the switch from, oh my God, something's about to happen, to, well, all right, here we go. Like somehow he knew that someday this would come. And when it happened, but I love, and of course nobody knew that because like George Lucas didn't even know that at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And now when you watch that scene in A New Hope, to me, especially based on everything we've gotten over the last 25 years, 30 years, it just feels different and it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah. There's a lot of moments in his scenes in A New Hope where he plays it a little vague, and there's a genius there that I would love to think someone was like, just play it vague and we'll kind of figure it out later. But it probably was like, so what is my motivation here? I don't know. You just want him to come along. Okay.
Okay, I can do that, George.
Yes.
Just give me one extra point in the
yes.
and it worked. And there he goes. And now he's
What is your favorite line to quote?
Well, okay, so I'll give you 3. Is that okay? Can I give you 3?
Oh yeah, yeah.
One is what I really need is a droid that understands the binary language of moisture evaporators. And it's just become something so much so that even my wife, who's not a big Star Wars fan, if I ever say something like, you know what I need, she'll know to say what I really need is a droid that understands. It just has become a line that has stuck with me forever, and I don't know why. The second line is something that me and my friends from growing up in my bar band, the drummer is my best friend since 4th grade, so we've seen Star Wars together. We've grew up Star Wars together. We traded Star Wars action figures. We occasionally will just do a probe droid impression for no reason, so that I'll put his line number, just sort of like ramp, and we'll sort of do that. And then but my favorite line is from K2SO when he says, I find that answer vague and unconvincing, because I can find a reason to use that almost every single day. So.
There is something in the writing of Star Wars that is so appropriate for corporate life.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
From impressive, most impressive, to
yep.
Do I find your answer vague and I'm sorry, I totally slipped my mind what the second part. I find your
vague and unconvincing.
Yeah.
I use it with my kids quite often. Like I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'm like, did you clean that up? No. Well, I find that answer vague and unconvincing.
So this kind of dovetails into the last one. Can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
Yeah, well, I can sort of do the probe droid. Well, I don't think I've ever done this for anybody. I can do a tauntaun, but I don't know how I feel about doing this. So let me try, because my son does this now too. So all right, I'm gonna try this. I've never done this in public before, so here we go. So it's really what does Star Wars mean to you first? You're getting the exclusive Pete Fletzer tauntaun impression.
Well, honestly, as soon as you did the probe droid, I was like, man, no one's ever done a tauntaun. Why does it?
There it is.
There it is. Ask and you shall receive.
You never know what you're going to get.
And then my final question for Five with the Force is, besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, a comic book, a novel, a game.
Yeah. You know, I would love to say like The Mandalorian or Obi-Wan or something like that. And those are great, and I do love them. But I think I would say probably the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter PC game from the 90s. because I threw myself into that game, and that became every fighting game, every fighter game that I've ever played since then. I've compared to that, and it was like, my gaming skills were the right for that, because I played what was it, Rogue Squadron, I guess it was, that came out a couple years ago, and I loved it, but I got my butt kicked because
Yeah.
gaming has advanced beyond where I'm at now, and I'm first to admit that. I mean, I love Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor and all those. But yeah, I guess if I had to say my favorite non-movie content, it was probably X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, or any of those X-Wing or TIE Fighter games from that era.
Yeah.
Those LucasArts games, they were so much fun.
I mean, those games came out of in what, like 91, I think the first one came out.
Hmm.
And there was nothing in the Star Wars
Right.
world in 1991.
Yep.
And all of a sudden there was this beautiful game where you could jump into the cockpit of a TIE fighter or an X-Wing and just go to war. And it
Yep.
was fun.
I would literally spend. I was let me see, in 91 ish. I was a Radio Shack store manager. That was my career at that time. While I was trying to work toward some of the freelance stuff, and yeah, I would come home from work, lived alone, and I would just, like, in my little apartment, and I would just freaking play that for hours and hours. I had the joystick. I invested in the joystick to play it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was so much fun. It was such a fun game. Damn, now I want it back. But again, like, Rogue Squadron was fantastic and looked great, but I even invested in the joystick for the PS5 for that, and
Yeah.
I was just no good at it. It's just different.
So what was the first Star Wars thing you came into contact with me? And can you describe your interaction with that?
Yeah, so I was born in 1970. So in 1977, for my 7th birthday, which was July, so the film had already been out, my grandmother bought me a Star Wars t-shirt for my birthday. And there was R2D2 and C3PO. In fact, I have saved, I don't have the shirt, but I still have the decal that was on it saved on my computer, because I went and I had to search for it because I had to find it. And it's not an uncommon picture. It's the one where R2 and 3PO are standing in the hall of the Tantive V4, and they're just sort of standing next to each other. You've seen it a thousand times. Has the Star Wars logo and kind of an angle with, like, the airbrush look. And I remember getting that and just being like, I don't know what this is, but I need more of it. And I remember thinking for some reason that C3PO was a bad guy. I have no idea why. That's my odd memory of Star Wars before I saw it. And then my mom and dad took me and my brother to go see it. My dad tells me it was around September of that year by the time we finally got to the theater to see it. And I just remember, I don't remember seeing the movie. Like, I don't remember the movie itself. I kind of remember the theater. There's, like, hits from the movie that I recall. Like, for some reason, the R2 being shot by the Jawas burned into my head, and of course the final battle on the Death Star. But the sort of moment that Star Wars was burned into my brain forever was driving home. I remember sitting in the back of my dad's station wagon in the way far back, because safety was not yet invented, and sitting there, and as cars drove by, pretending I was shooting TIE fighters, because that was my 7-year-old brain, and that was what I was doing. And that was and then from that moment forward, it was Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars, everything Star Wars for me. And so that was, it's interesting though, because I've had my dad on the show, and when he told me the story that we didn't see it till September, like, in my mind, I was like, oh, we saw it right away. We were there with everybody else, but nope, we were late bloomers on that one. And but it became everything. Like I said, my best friend growing up, who's the drummer in my band, we just, like, everything was Star Wars. And once the figures came out the following year, we would trade action figures, and the for those of you who are old enough, you remember the blue, orange, yellow, and green Star Wars cards that were at the different and we would walk down to the store and we would just buy packs, and we would trade, and we would do all that stuff. And everything
cards
in our life, everything in our life from, like, 1977 to 1983 was Star Wars. Everything we did, whether it was books or everything, we doodled, everything was Star Wars. And but back to that first memory of seeing it in the theater, getting the t-shirt, and I had the t-shirt before the movie, and it's just been, and honestly, it's been with me ever since. I now have a 10-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and I'm going through Star Wars experiences with them. Not my daughter as much. She's kind of too cool for Star Wars now, but Luckily, my son is not. Yeah. So,
I could still imprint on him.
right, I could still ruin him and make him become a podcaster for some reason when he's older. So,
The best part in the station wagon in the way back was after Empire Strikes Back, and you could pretend you were back of the snow speeder shooting at the
exactly. Right. But you don't want to be Dak because that did not turn out very well.
he did not have the strength to pull the ears off a gun dart.
No, he did not. He thought he might have, but he did not.
So what you got way into Star Wars. Did you have a favorite toy or a favorite item?
Yeah. It's funny. I look back on my Star Wars stuff when I was a kid, and my dad for Christmas one year got me, I think, I would say my favorite all-time toy was probably the AT-AT, which came out. And I can't believe I call it an AT-AT because I normally call it an AT-AT. But I think in the commercial they call it an AT-AT, so I fell for the marketing. But I remember that toy like from when I was. But my dad spoiled us, and it's funny. I think back to the 70s and 80s, and it was a bizarre economic time, and there was a portion of time where my dad was out of work for a while. But yet, every Christmas there were more Star Wars toys than I could even play with. And like, I remember I had the Dewback and the Tauntaun and the Dagobah set and Twin Pod Cloud Car and all those things. But I think my favorite one from the original times way back in the day was probably that Walker, because you were able to just stuff all your figures in there and move the head with the handle, and
it had the chin guns.
Yes, I was just going to say the chin guns. I remember those. They were clear and with little red lights in them, and they did not sound anything like they did in the movie, but it was cool. And I also remember, did you have the troop transport, which made the appearance in The Mandalorian with the different sound effects? That was cool.
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the troop. It wasn't the stormtrooper.
Yeah, the stormtrooper transport with
and it had like
the little places you put them along the side. Yeah, yep. Oh man, memories.
Well, what I love about modern Star Wars right now is they reach back into the strange past and pull back these references. I know in Visions Season 2, I want to say the Spy Dancer, there was an MTV 4 or 7, which was this Imperial big tired transport.
Yep.
And they just it was one of the Kenner lines of toys that weren't in the movies, that was just created to sell more toys, to have a price point like at $5.
Yep. They were like the little one figure would fit inside it. Yep.
And I saw that. I was like, oh, this is my favorite episode now. I didn't even have it as a kid. I just love the fact that they pulled this thing out.
Yeah. It is really cool that they are going back. That's the advantage of what Filoni has been up to, is he's literally, Filoni and Favreau, they've said it about Mandalorian with this is the they're playing with their toys and it shows, which is so great, which is so cool.
And a lot of what shows is their love for it. They really kind of, it looks like they're really entertaining their younger selves with with the show.
Yep. Yeah. So, what I always say a lot about I was to the which episode was it? During the gallery, and my feeling on it was always, you had all these big directors in the room. You had Bryce Dallas Howard and Taika Waititi, and you had, of course, Jon Favreau, and then you had Dave Filoni, who was like one of us. He was representing the nerd in the room. Like, I could definitely hear him like saying to John, well, the scope on that gun would actually be at an angle versus when John would be like, I would never know that, but those of us watching at home,
we would know.
We would catch that. So, which is great. And I think that's where the love comes from. And I think that's what's missing from some other franchises is it needs to be rooted in the core base of fan without alienating the average fan. I always talk about my dad on our show. He's 77 years old, and he went with me to Star Wars Celebration with my 10-year-old son, which was very cool. But he watched Mandalorian when Ahsoka was on, and he didn't know who Ahsoka was. I, of course, knew who Ahsoka was. But Dave Filoni did a phenomenal job of making that connection so that you didn't have to know 7 seasons of Clone Wars to be able to understand how cool it was to see her there. And there's enough mystery that they'll be able to continue to tell a story, which will be interesting. So
this brings me to something I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is fan service. And I think there's a lot of conversation around like fan service is used as a critique a lot. For instance, I can't think of a great example right at the moment, but the idea of like, oh, Star Wars, The Force Awakens was great, but it was just all fan service. And then there's things like Luke showing up in Boba Fett, or not Boba Fett, Mandalorian.
Yep.
Which I would think is tremendous fan service, yet everyone universally loves it. What do you think fan service is, and what do you think is a good fan service versus bad fan service?
So I'll quote James Bainey from the Resistance broadcast when he said, or this was years ago, he said, fan service, they're servicing the fan, and that fan is me, so service away, right? So
yes.
So I think it's an interesting concept. I think it needs to be done. I think Mandalorian had done it very, very well in the first 2 seasons, where they, a lot of people were like, I don't want to go back to Tatooine. We've been in Tatooine. Well, it's like Dune. That's where the planet, I mean, in more ways than one, but that's where it's where it happens. That's where, the starting point is. I think fan service is good, is great when it's done in a way that that is subtle, or in a way that serves the story as well, right? So a good example is Luke coming in at the end of The Mandalorian. I think that's a great example. I think it's subtle fan service, and it's fan service at sort of a different level, and that is bringing Cobb Vanth into the story from my favorite Star Wars novels, which are the Chuck Wendig novels. Was so great to see, and that's fan service for a certain group of fans. I haven't seen the Flash movie, but I understand that it's full of fan service, and some people say it's great and some people say it's not. I'm actually, as I'm sort of talking my way through this, I don't know if there is such a thing as bad fan service unless it doesn't serve the story. Like, so if I'm trying to think of an example. So Qui-Gon coming in at the end of the Kenobi series was probably the most overt fan service that I've seen. I mean, this is Star Wars, so it's all overt fan service, and there's a lot of it. But Qui-Gon coming in at the end was like, yeah, here you go. We know you all wanted to see Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon again. Here he is. But it didn't hurt the story. If they had brought him in earlier, I think it might have hurt the story. So,
yeah.
And it made sense because the whole time Obi-Wan was trying to get to that point where he was reconnecting with his master. Yoda told him, you'll reconnect with your master. And so it was a payoff versus, just like Luke at the end of that Mandalorian episode, it was a payoff. So yeah, I'm literally trying to think. I'll tell you where fan service doesn't work for me. Here's one example. In Rebels season 1, episode 3, and the only reason I know the number is because I've been watching it lately. I'm a nerd, but I'm not quite that level nerd. But when R2 and 3PO are on the transport that the Ghost crew is on when they're trying to start that heist, that felt fan servicey to me in a way that was like, really, is 3PO gonna be here? It just felt weird. Did it kill the show? No, because it's Star Wars. It's not Shakespeare. It's not high drama. It's fun. And for some people, like a great example of where it worked but people aren't giving it credit, I think, is Lizzo and Jack Black in season 3, right? And it's not fan service so much as it's, I guess you can call it fan service, right? Would you call that fan service?
I don't know, honestly, because it feels like it's fan service for a different fan than a fan of Star. Like it's for the other fans of Star Wars, not
right.
It's
top of the bell curve. Yeah.
It's trying to invite. It's the fan service that's inviting more people in.
Correct. And so, whereas for you and I, it may have pulled us out for a second. I'm a huge Jack Black fan. I don't know enough about Lizzo to like or dislike her, but I knew she was. My son, 10 years old, I would get up at 3 a.m, watch the episode. Then later that day, my son and I would watch it. And he's like, is that Jack Black and Lizzo? And I said, yeah. He goes, cool. And that was it.
Yeah.
And he moved on and he continued to take in the story. So again, as long as it's serving the story, it's fine. It's fine. So
I think
that was a much longer answer than you probably expected for that.
no, because I think it's a kind of a complicated question, and deserves like a conversational back and forth. I think a lot of times fandom is too quick to just make a judgment and then throw down and double down on that judgment.
Yeah. Yep.
As opposed to, for instance, when we were talking about Phantom Menace, and why not talk about that now? But for me, I know I saw Star Wars A New Hope in the theaters in 77, so I'm of that age.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who I saw Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, in 1999,
Mm-hmm.
now are still kind of have the same dislike of it. Whereas I'm a
Yeah.
little more of, I'm with you. I'm like, I kind of see it differently now. I have fun with it. And I like that journey of evolving my perception of the movies,
Mm-hmm.
because it allows for something new every single time I watch it.
Right.
So were you a non-fan of Phantom Menace when it first came out?
Yeah, so it came out at a weird time for me because, as you referenced at the top, I was doing some work for Star Wars Galaxy magazine. I ended up covering it for Star Wars Insider, the New York City premiere, because I bought the charity tickets so that I could be at that premiere, and then I reached out to Scott Chernoff at Insider. He's like, "Oh yeah, if you're going to be there, please do something for me." So I did that, but
Amazing.
yeah, I like you. So so much so. I've told this before. It's because I've been doing podcasts for 4 years, man. This is why I talk too much. But your guys haven't heard it yet, so I'll tell it here. I remember literally watching the opening of the Phantom Menace and hearing the really questionable Asian stereotype accents of the Nemoidians, and literally thinking to myself, oh wait, this is just a joke, and then the real movie's going to start in a minute. I mean, literally that far. Since it was the charity premiere, there were celebrities all over the place. Like it was like one of those magic eye pictures where I would say, oh, I'm in a theater, and then I'd be like, oh my god, there's Natalie Portman, there's Liam Neeson, like they're in the theater with me. And I remember when it started, and I think a lot of people were like kind of looking around at each other, not sure what it was. But my favorite story from that, and as it relates to the Phantom Menace, because I walked out of it and I honestly am not, I was like, I don't know if I like that or not. And as I was walking out, because it was the charity premiere, and I was at 99, so I was 29 years old, 28 years old. I didn't know what you wear to a movie premiere in New York City. I didn't know. I mean, I was a nerd. I wasn't like a fashion guy at all. I just said I was a Radio Shack store manager at one point in my life. What? So I wore a suit, like a suit to a freaking premiere in New York City. And as I'm walking,
feels about right to me.
I mean, I feel like that wasn't the wrong choice, but it wasn't cool at all. Let me put it that way. Like me and future questionable President Donald Trump was the only two people wearing a suit in the entire theater, I think. So, as I'm walking out of the theater, I see Christian Slater behind me, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm such a huge Christian Slater fan. I loved Interview with the Vampire. I loved Heathers. I loved everything he's ever done. When am I going to get a chance to talk to Christian Slater again? So I turn to him and I go, Christian, what did you think of the movie? And he's looking at me. He's like, this guy's in a suit. I don't know who this guy is. He just called me by my first name, like he knows me. I could tell, like, working in his head is like, who is this guy? Should I know him? And so his answer to me, he looks at me and he goes, visually stunning. That was his review of Phantom Menace. Now, the thing to keep in mind about that, and I totally forgot about this till somebody, I was talking to somebody about it not too long ago. We didn't know who was going to play Anakin in episode 2. And there were actually rumors that guys like Leonardo DiCaprio and Christian Slater could have been up for that role. So he's looking at me. He doesn't know who I am. He probably didn't love it like most of the people who walked out of the theater, if we're being honest. It didn't want to hurt his chances. Visually stunning was a fair answer, but it was a phenomenal experience. Great to see that. So to answer your question, my initial reaction was that was not what I expected. That was not what I wanted. And I think that's the problem with the sequel series as well for people, is they've taken too much. I always go back to the Luke on Dagobah going into the cave, and Yoda says, when Luke says what's in there, he says only what you take with you. So I brought in the same memories that I had when I was 7, 10, and 13 years old going to see those movies. And there's this goofy Jar Jar Binks guy, and there's this kid who's not a great actor, and I mean, was maybe just not well directed. That's a whole other conversation. There were all these things that 29-year-old me, 28-year-old me couldn't rectify or couldn't connect with 13-year-old me. And that was the reaction. And I think that's why now the movie's going to be 25 years old next year. 25 years later, I can put myself in that time and I can think about it differently. And now I look at it as the bigger picture. And as I said before, that you have all the stories. Plus, when I wrote my fan fiction novelization of it, I did a ton of research into that movie, and I became like a student of that movie. But ultimately, it's just the movie has aged. Have the effects aged well? Mostly, but not all of them. Has the story evolved? Yes, the story has aged well. The acting is still the acting. The problems with it are still the problems with it, but it's like an old friend. It's really become, you're like, yeah, that old friend. Yeah, I've known him for a long time. Didn't like him at first, but now he's a good guy. I still see his problems, but he's still a good guy. So
He still drunk drives, but you know what? Good guy.
yeah, just stay in my neighborhood. You're good. Yep. Grumpy old man. Yeah.
It's with your reaction to the dialect, wondering, is this a joke? And then the movie will really start.
Yeah.
I kind of had that same thing. I saw it in the theaters 5 times that summer.
Uh-huh.
And every time I was like, maybe this will be the real.
Right. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. Yep.
So tell me, what is one of the things that your opinion changed about through the process of writing Duel of the Fates?
Mm-hmm.
One of your viewpoints of Phantom Menace that had changed or evolved through that process?
Well, it was good for me for a couple reasons. So I wrote it, and just it was one of those things where it was I wrote it all throughout 2018, I think it was, and I was talking to a good friend of mine, and we were talking about the Phantom Menace, and I still hadn't come around on the Phantom Menace, and I was talking about how I always felt like Darth Maul was the most wasted villain in any story ever. I mean, he was on the packaging, he was on the back of the poster, or he was the background of the poster. He had like 6 lines. He was like Boba Fett 2.0 in that. He was so, and I also had not come around to I hadn't watched all the Clone Wars. I remember hearing about Maul coming back in the Clone Wars and being like, oh, that might be interesting, but I'll get to that. Because there was that, I was always a fan, but I didn't dig in as much. I mean, life was a little bit different at that time as well. But I was talking to this friend of mine, and I said, I kind of feel like the Phantom Menace is the film version of a really good book that didn't quite get it right. I mean, how often have you gone to a movie from your favorite book and you're like, oh, they just kind of, and the other thought process I had with that was, if you're making a summer blockbuster, you have to make it action. But at the end of the day, the Phantom Menace, to me, is much more of a political thriller, right?
Yeah.
To do it that way makes more sense. There's a lot of intrigue. We all know about Sidious and Palpatine, but the audience didn't. We did, but the story didn't. Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of explore that. I also wanted to explore Darth Maul a little bit more because I am such a big fan of his. And through doing that, I then watched some of the Clone Wars episodes, and I did research into some of the stuff. And I found he was just an interesting character who was just hell-bent on revenge. Like that to me was really, so I told his story a little bit more in it. And so what your question was, what did I learn and what did I change? I think I just kind of changed my perception of the story, because I feel like, and I'm in no way saying I get it like George Lucas, because George Lucas is the story, but I feel like I get the story more. And that combined with, because during that time, then I watched all the Clone Wars stuff, and then I started to really get into it and then get the full story. And then one of the things that I also did in my crazy fan fiction thing was to connect it to things that we know happened. Like I introduced Sifo Dyas in that story because it made sense to me to do that. But I felt like I understood what George wanted to do with it, and that feels very arrogant to say out loud. But I feel like I understand where he was trying to start the story from. And so, from that perspective, if I take that, erase the mistakes that or the issues that we may or may not have with the movie and whatever at whatever level, but then just take it for the fun ride that it is, knowing where it's going, then it becomes like a favorite roller coaster, and it changes just sort of the basic appeal of the story.
It sounds like it changes also your approach to the story. Like you're
Hmm.
not approaching it going, "Who's the Han Solo?" and when are the things that I recognize of Star Wars going to show up? It's
Right,
more of, oh, I see where he's initially building and where it's going to go, which kind of deepens my understanding.
right, right.
Through your watching of Clone Wars,
Mm.
what was some of your first of all, what were some of your favorite storylines?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's such a lame answer, but I don't think you can beat season 7 from top to bottom. Even
Oh
I
yeah.
even love the Martez sisters. I know a lot of people don't, but season 7 top to bottom with the introduction of the Bad Batch. In fact, I think the Bad Batch portion is the worst part of season 7, which is kind of weird to say. But what I loved about it is one thing that not a lot of people talk about is when Anakin kills um, Admiral Trench. That's it.
Admiral Trench, yes.
Yes, I was thinking General. Okay, so yes, so when he kills Admiral Trench, that is a huge Vader type moment. Like there was aggression there, there was anger there. There was so I feel like it was honestly, I feel like season 7 is a better close to the prequels
Sit.
than Revenge of the Sith because yeah, I mean, we do get all the really cool stuff that Revenge of the Sith brings us, but I feel like that arc was great. I also, a lot of people are torn on the Mortis arc, and I love it as a fairy tale. I don't love it as a pure Star Wars story. It doesn't really feel like a pure Star Wars story, but I love it as a fairy tale, and I love it as the relationship between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka, and I think that it's just an interesting story. It feels like I've given the two most generic possible answers on Clone Wars, but
But that was the one where he with the brother, the sister,
yeah,
I think they said the father, right?
yeah, yep. The three sort of the balance, the
Yeah.
dark side and the light side. Yep.
Yes.
Um,
Which is also one of the first I think it's one of the first places where we get to see kind of what an Inquisitor looks like. Like that design kind of became the Inquisitor design
yeah, to a degree. Yep, absolutely. Yep, I can see that. Yeah,
with
and
the brother.
it was it just like I said, it was the crazy weird stuff. Like I'm so hopeful that Star Wars does not go into the world between worlds as a multiverse, and I'm 99% sure they won't because that
Mhm.
just messes up everything. I mean, I was listening to Children of the Watch, their podcast. I was listening to it last night, and they were talking about how they think that with the upcoming series, what they'll do is they'll try to prove that World Between Worlds is not a time machine or something like that. They're going to sort of show how it's connected, which is cool. But story wise, I think I like the weird, funky Force stuff. I loved in
Yeah.
Rise of Skywalker. One of the few things I loved about Rise of Skywalker, but I don't want to annoy people. But one of the things that I loved the most was handing off the lightsaber at the end from Rey to Kylo or Ben. I think that was just a really cool, funky Force thing to do, and you
Yeah.
don't need an answer to it. And it's one of those things that I talk a lot about. In fact, one of the things on my website, I wrote a funny tongue-in-cheek review of The Empire Strikes Back, as if I was a modern day angry Star Wars fan, and talked about all the things we didn't know about. Oh yeah, like now all of a sudden Luke seeing Force Ghosts, like that's
Yes.
like
Yes.
you don't need an explanation. It's the Force. It's kind of cool, and there's neat stuff that happens. I thought Last Jedi was fantastic because I loved what the way they created it. They didn't need to explain it. I love that Snoke got killed in the Last Jedi, because you know what, when you and I saw Return of the Jedi, we had no idea who the Emperor was. We just knew he was the bad guy, and it was
Yeah.
awesome that Vader and Luke combined to take him down. That's all you needed to know. And that's the thing with the Mortis arc, to make sure I bring it back to your question. I think that's what's cool about it is there's a lot of really cool concepts going on there that they don't need to be answered. They're just like, oh, that's kind of a like this weird mystical part of the Force, the energy field that made up of all living things that surrounds us and binds us and brings the galaxy together. It's kind of like that. That was cool. And I like that about, and that's what I loved about Clone Wars in general over all 7 seasons is you could have 3 weird episodes that just felt kind of out of place, but when you go back and you see them again, they work, they're fun. And one of the things that I love most about Clone Wars, honestly, is that it's my son's entree into Star Wars. For you and me, we lived through the I Am Your Father, and wow, that was our big shock. For my daughter, who's 13, before we went to go see Rise of Skywalker, we watched all the movies back to back over a couple months, and she didn't get the Palpatine Sidious connection. So that was her I'm Your Father moment, which was really cool because she was like, when he finally reveals himself, she goes, I thought there was something weird about that guy, which was cool because, you and I knew it was Ian McDiarmid. So there was no secret at all.
No.
But then watching Clone Wars with my son, his Luke, Han, and Leia are Rex, Cody, and Fives. Like that's his guys. And when I watched season 7 with him, I didn't even think about the fact that he watched the movies, but that's not been his thing. When they turn, he was like, his jaw literally dropped. Like I was like,
Wow.
I am scarring my child here for life. But I mean, it's like, can you imagine if we were watching Return of the Jedi and something happened and Luke, Han, and Leia were suddenly bad guys? It was so mind-boggling. It was I mean, but I'm glad that he got that surprise moment. We got the I Am Your Father. My daughter got the Sidious Palpatine thing, and he got Order 66 from that perspective, which was very cool.
That's really cool. I want to talk about introducing the movies to new fans, but before we do that, I want to talk about expectations, because going into Phantom Menace, going into Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, we touched upon it a little bit, how we bring our expectations into it. Do you still have expectations for your favorite things? And how do you approach those expectations? Like, do you try to avoid content like trailers, theories, whatever is online that's hot for the day?
Yeah, it's really hard. In fact, the same guy who I was talking to that inspired me to write like Phantom Menace thing, he and I've talked a lot about expectations, because when I walked out of The Last Jedi, I remember saying to my friend who I went to go see it with, we saw the Thursday night, so first showing, and I walked out and I said, that was both the best and worst Star Wars movie I'd ever seen, because honestly, in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, so Knights of Ren are going to be there. Luke's going to train her. It's, in my head, I had the entire movie figured out. And of course, as we know, none of it happened. And I think that was really kind of my first sort of realization that bringing in expectations is a really bad idea. Because then the next experience, Rise of Skywalker, I couldn't help but bring expectations. And I put a lot of that on J.J. Abrams, the way he kept talking about, this is going to wrap the whole saga up. There's a lot of pressure on us to do this and do that. And it's the best way to put it is
JJ? There?
Was there? Did you? But the way I put it is my 11th favorite Star Wars live action movie, right? I mean, I'll still watch it. If it's on, I will still watch it. And I'm still excited to see where the stories go to make all the connections, but it's my least favorite. But my best lesson though in expectations is Book of Boba Fett. And that I tried to not have expectations, and I went into the series with no expectations. And I enjoyed the first, 7 episodes. I enjoyed the first 6 episodes very much. And I loved, the return of Cad Bane, and I would have written it all differently, but that's a whole other story. But I loved it. But by the time we got to the 7th episode, I unfortunately fell back into that. Here's what's going to happen. The Pikes are going to come back. They're going to be strong. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And I was wrong about everything. And I remember being done with the Book of Boba Fett series and being like, well, I guess that didn't go where I wanted it to. I guess it was all right. Then I, again, watched it with my 10-year-old son, 9 at the time. And Boba Fett's literally riding a Rancor into town. My son is like, that's like King Kong. My son made the connection, which I was so proud of. He made the classic movie connection. And when it was over, he turns to me and goes, that was the coolest thing I ever saw. And I was like, you know what? It kind of was. You had gunfights in the streets. You had robots versus monsters. You had Boba Fett, and Baby Yoda was back. And it was like, yeah, that's everything that we could want in Star Wars. But again, in my head, to your point, I brought an expectation that just wasn't going to happen. And honestly, most Star Wars is for my son and not
Mm.
us who bring in the way the Pikes would handle this would be this, this, and this, and the Pikes are still fighting for that. And where's Kira? Where's
Yes.
Black Sun and all this? Nobody knows that. Nobody cares. People want to have fun. We'll get it. We'll get it in some other form. It'll be subtly put into the next series or whatever. But we need to go in. So answering your question, unfortunately, I still bring expectations in, and I try so hard not to, but I don't think there's any way not to, because Star Wars has been a part of my life for 45 years. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's like a family holiday. Like, I know Thanksgiving's going to have political conversation that I don't want to have. It's going to get weird, but but it's because it's happened for the last 45 years.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I think it's really hard, and people who say I'm going into it with no expectations, I think are lying. I just think it's hard not to.
Yeah. I totally agree. I feel like expectations are my downfall a little bit in enjoyment, and I'd rather just enjoy.
But I think what's so interesting about that is the people who complain about The Last Jedi. Look, and I know plenty of people that don't like it, and that's awesome. And so I don't. Again, I know people who love The Rise of Skywalker, and like I said, it's my 11th favorite movie. That's awesome, and I love that. That's the great thing about Star Wars. I like Clone Wars. I'm a big Clone Wars fan, but not as big as my son. So everybody brings their thing. But what I love about The Last Jedi is the people who are making the most noise about it to get clicks and take advantage of the YouTube algorithm. But the reality is that movie is about them in every single way. It's about their argument. I don't know if it's about them, but their argument being, this is not my Luke Skywalker. And even Mark Hamill saying, this isn't what I expected. And, as the guy who brought Luke Skywalker to life for many years, he's entitled to, like, hey, let me think about how this goes. But that entire movie to me is about the fact that your heroes are not who you think they are, but they can still inspire, right? And that's what's so great about, and that's why I think the challenge with Last Jedi to me is the series could have ended right there on the Falcon. They're sitting on the Falcon. They know that they need hope. They need to rebuild, which is sort of the story of Star Wars. I mean, you go from the Republic to the Empire to the First Order. And that's sort of the running theme. If you're not paying attention, it's always going to come back. And that was a great way to end it. And I think that was part of the challenge, was the story worked and could have ended right there. But again, to your point, it was the expectation. To me, I was like, this didn't go at all the way I thought,
No.
Just like Luke said.
Now, we talked about introducing your kids to the movies a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular order? Was there a way you approached it to introduce it to them?
I had every intention of, I'm going to do 4, 5, and 6, and then we'll do 1, 2, and 3, and that's the way we'll do it, because that's the way I did it. And what turned out really happening was both my kids, the first one they saw was A New Hope, just because it was like, that's, to me, it was the first one I think you can actually just sort of sit with it, because both my kids were pretty young when I watched it with them for the first time. I actually have a great video somewhere, and every time I think about it, I got to find it. My son was, I want to say, like 3 years old, and we were watching A New Hope, and he was sitting on the floor and on the screen on TV. And the second that Vader comes in the Tantive, he stands up and he goes, "Oh no." And that was it. Like, so it worked, right? Like, yeah. Oh my God. I don't know anything about Darth Vader, but I know that's not good. And that worked. So yeah, I kind of, like I said, I had this vision of how I was going to do it. Honestly, I'm not even sure if my son has watched all 9 of the saga films through from beginning to end, because he's a Clone Wars kid. He's a huge fan of Bad Batch. Like, I asked him who his favorite clone is, and it's Wrecker. And that's awesome. That's great. His lizard is named Cody. Like, that's how much of a Clone Wars kid he is.
Wow.
So I kind of just made it. Yeah, I kind of just made it available. But my daughter and I, like I said, my daughter, who's it's so funny. My son and daughter couldn't be more different. But my daughter, we literally watched 1 through 8, because we went to go see Rise of Skywalker, and that was an interesting way to watch it. I've never watched them in that order before, from beginning to end, and it was kind of a cool way to. There's the machete order and all that stuff, which is cool. But I also feel like, giving you much more of a bigger answer than you expected, I think it's.
I have no expectations, Pete.
See, no expectations. That's the way to go. Perfect. I think Star Wars is such a part of our culture now, and that's a whole other conversation as to how much it's just, I mean, you can't throw a cat without hitting a Grogu t-shirt somewhere, right? It's you walk into Walmart or Target and it's everywhere. People who like probably don't even know what they're wearing. They're like, oh, is this a clone trooper? That's cool. And that's where so I don't know if there is a proper order anymore. Because there's so much content, but it's all like, it all. It's almost like doing research now versus watching a movie. It's kind of it's changed sort of what it means and how you go about it.
I mean, one of the things that struck me as you were talking was maybe the order is the order of the day, which is essentially your son was growing up with Clone Wars, therefore that was the good entry point,
right,
for him. Your daughter may be probably too young for Phantom Menace.
She was The Force Awakens. She was creating her own Rey costume before she even saw the movie, so that was pretty cool. Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about having a lead character like Rey, too, is seeing young girls be able to relate to the character in a way that we were able to relate to Luke.
Right. And here's the reality. It doesn't, I don't think anybody who's being honest could not relate to her, right?
Yeah.
It just so happened that, and I'm not saying that it's wrong that we related to Luke, because honestly, in the 70s and 80s action movies were marketed to little boys. That's the way it was. And so for people to be upset about Rey, I never understood that, because to me it was like, okay, so it's just a different doorway. It's the same story. If you can't follow her arc because she's a female protagonist, then that's more of a commentary on you than anything else. So, but yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take you off track there.
No, it's totally fine. I will take myself off track just within 3 words. But I was thinking about how, like, maybe right now, for someone very young, the Young Jedi, the Younglings Adventures or Young Jedi Adventures?
Yeah, the Young Jedi Adventures. Yeah, yep.
With all I know is Nubs. That's who I always see at Target. It's like, Nubs is the new Grogu.
Yeah.
I guess you could call him Grow Blue.
Grow Blue. There you go. Now, hashtag Grow Blue. Go ahead, go do that. Get that. Own that. Run that. Go with it.
Give me 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Hold on. I'm gonna go to Twitter. I'll be right back.
There's some people I have to piss off. Hold on.
Right. And let me just say something positive about it too, and see what happens.
Yeah. My favorite color is blue, but why did they give it to this jackass?
You like blue. That means you don't like orange. So what is wrong with you? You are against orange.
So you don't like Ahsoka?
And there it goes. And now we've blown it up.
Oh, this will get cut. No, I don't know. I'm going to land this plane here with a couple last questions, if you have the time.
I do.
What is your favorite Star Wars memory?
Favorite Star Wars memory? I would say Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, this most recent one in the US, because I took my 10-year-old son and my 77-year-old father, and it was just all Fletzers all the time hanging out with Star Wars. And on top of that, I got to meet my 2 co-hosts on my Force Center show and people that I have become really good friends with through social media for the first time in person, and hang out with them and have a drink with them and have dinner and nerd out about Star Wars. So I think Star Wars Celebrate, man, I would love to go to Japan in 25, but I just don't see that really happening. It just seems a little bit absurd. Trying to talk my wife into going to Japan to see Star Wars stuff is probably not. Maybe if I just talk about the Japan stuff, that might work.
Yes. But
Star Wars Celebration is without a doubt my greatest Star Wars memory, just because of the camaraderie. And if you get a chance to go to one, I tell anybody to go, just because it's my dad, who's a casual fan. He was like, I was thinking about going to the UK for Celebration this past year. I was like, what? You were going to go? What? So, it changes it. If you love Star Wars, you'll actually love it more. And if you're a fan, it'll change your approach to Star Wars forever. So
that's what I really would like to go. I've talked to a bunch of people who've been able to go, and every story sounds amazing, especially the stories of friendship.
Yep.
Did you hear I couldn't say that word?
Yeah.
Friendship. I pulled a Porky Pig there.
That was great.
and kindness seems to really
Yep.
stand out.
Yep.
What would you like to see in the future of Star Wars?
First thing I'd like to see is the strike end, and that the actors and the writers get what they deserve. That's the
Yep.
number one thing, and not just the actors and the writers, but everybody who is affected by this entire thing is such a mess. So that's number one. But I am really excited to see where things go with the Rey story, with the post episode 9 storytelling. I think that's great. I mean, I'm really enjoying this heir to the Empire era that we're playing in right now with Mandalorian and all those things. But I want it to get to a point where we're not beholden to the legacy, and see,
Yeah.
if you're going to turn the story over. I mean, what I always remember about the day that I heard that Disney bought Lucasfilm, is, first of all, it was during Hurricane Sandy. So anybody who's on the East Coast remembers that was just 10 days of, like, literally the power was out in my house, and I had my phone and it came up on Facebook, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's interesting. But I remember me and my dad, who has been my, sort of my greatest Star Wars partner for years. We used to talk about, wouldn't it be cool if George Lucas gave the reins to other people to write stories and see what happened. And what I think that was the biggest opportunity for episode 7, 8, and 9. And while I think they're fun stories, and to a degree, it gives us closure on all of our legacy characters, it was still so connected as a result that there was no way it would make everybody happy, right? There's just no way that it would get there. Whereas if we go into, Rey and the new Jedi Order and whatever they go with that, or whatever direction, that's great, because that allows us to create new villains, and new threats, and new good guys, and so it's still playing in that world. I think that's why Mandalorian season 1 and 2 worked so well, is because it really was exploring that new era of Star Wars in a way that felt familiar, but in its own world. So
yeah, it's interesting with the Rey storyline coming out 2025, 2026, whenever.
Right.
Is that it's going to be the first of the sequel trilogy to be able to lean on nostalgia a little bit.
Right.
And I find that a little mind-bending of, like, we're reaching that place.
Well, I mean, by the time it comes out, because with the strike, we'll screw up everything timing wise moving forward. We'll change the way things are done. It might not come out till Star Wars is 50 years old, which is wild, right? I mean, think about that.
Yes.
A story that's 50 years old and still relevant. When I remember watching Wizard of Oz in 1975, I was 5 years old. And I guess that movie was at that time. When did Wizard of Oz come out?
1939, I believe. Was it 39 or 42? But I want to say it's 39.
Yeah. So that movie was only 35 years old at the time. And now Star Wars is coming up in 2027. It'll be 50 years old and still relevant, still with a fan base that's willing to argue over it, which is pretty wild.
And
pretty amazing.
A growing fan base.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we had 13 spinoffs of what the Lion did right before?
Right. We need Dorothy? A prequel to the Wizard of Oz. What is Dorothy's, origin story? And
yeah, exactly. How the flying monkeys were made.
Oh yeah. Well, how can you even take out the Wicked Witch? We don't even know her story. Where did she come from? It's just
exactly. And who should play her in the sequel?
She doesn't look anything like the animated version.
In the original books, the shoes were silver.
They weren't ruby slippers. That's stupid. You know why they did that? Because they were woke. I don't know how that would be woke, but we'll
because
make that
they were
happen.
communists. And they represent red of the people, because she's of the people. And she's,
of course, it's a female protagonist. Why would Dorothy? Of course. Why isn't it Dan?
Where's Danny in his shoes? Probably drinking Bud Light, I bet.
I don't see any guns in the Wizard of Oz. You know why? Because they don't have guns in the Wizard of Oz. I don't know. Anyway, that's that's pretty good.
What are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
Good question. I think I think you need a lightsaber in every Star Wars, and people who say there's not one in Andor, I will fight them because I like to think that
Yeah.
uh, who's the
Yeah.
guy played by Skarsgård? I think his ship. I think those red lasers. I think they were
Kyber crystal.
lightsaber related. Yes, because they were just beams that flew. You
Yeah.
had a lightsaber in Solo, which didn't need one, but they brought it in. So I'm of the belief. This is my weird theory that there's some unwritten rule or some written rule, maybe even at the story group, that every Star Wars story has to have a lightsaber, whether it's Moff Gideon at the end of The Mandalorian or
That's right.
Maul at the end of Solo.
Even Skarsgård had that cane that felt like a
Right.
lightsaber
And he had
for.
the Kyber crystal necklace and all this.
Yep.
Yeah, see, it's all
If
there.
he just put those two together.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, just bang, and there he
Yeah.
goes. Yeah. Okay. So there's
Oh.
that. So lightsabers are need to be there. I think there needs to be a story of hope. A story. I know that's sort of the overused word from Rogue One, but it's true. I think always sort of that reminder that there's always hope if you're trying to get to whatever that goal is. And then I think the final thing is family. I think Star Wars stories, the best Star Wars stories, are always family related, and I think that's Andor. I don't think anybody was expecting a family story out of that, but man, there's so much
Yeah.
going on there with commitment to his family, his adopted family. And so I think that whether it's I think you have sort of three common themes throughout all of the Star Wars stories, and they're almost broken up throughout the trilogies, and that is the family you're born into, the family that you create, and the family that you find. And I think that's you have very different stories, but they all it all comes back to the fact that, yeah, I mean, you need some sort of familial element. You can be a loner, but when you find that family, it changes everything. Or you could have been born into the worst possible family, like a Palpatine, and still do something with it. It's so, yeah, family, hope, and lightsabers, I guess, would be my
Wow.
answer to your question.
What I love about what you said about the family you're born into, the family you create, and then the family you find, that in that order represents A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi so perfectly. Because
Yeah.
it's about the family he was born into, which is, even though adopted, that's where he grew up.
Yep.
The family he finds is Luke, Han and Leia, and
Yep.
Chewie. And the family he finds is his father at the end of Jedi. That's
Yep.
really great. Okay, my final question to you.
Yes.
You go to Skywalker Ranch, and there at the gates, George Lucas greets you. What do you say to him?
um what do I say to I go to Skywalker Ranch, George Lucas is at the gates. What do I say to George? I guess I say hello there. Yeah, or maybe I'll say hello there, and then I'll say thank you, because honestly, and look, there's so much debate about how much he actually planned and how much was happy accident. Whatever it was, he's created magic that has gone on for almost 50 years, which is, I'm sure not even he saw that coming. And so I think a thank you is probably the most important thing to say to George. Yeah.
Pete, thank you so much for your time. I really
This was
appreciate it.
awesome. This was great.
I love talking Star Wars with you. I feel like there's so much I didn't talk to you about, the Topps cards. Maybe if you're game for it in a couple months, if we can do just maybe a Topps cards discussion.
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that might be a lot of fun. But again, there's so much. And I'm really struck by how much like Celebration you must be in your acceptance, in your kindness, and in your absolute love of Star Wars. It's really impressive, and
Thank you.
I admire it. Thank you.
Thank you. I love hearing that. I think, in a world where, we joke around on our Force Connect show, and we say, we accept all opinions. It's just we have a no asshole policy, and that's kind of, I don't understand. There's no reason to be anything but joyful when you're talking about Star Wars. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I don't care we could debate the best Jedi ever and why did this happen and that, but let's just be fun and happy. But thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot. It means that I'm living what I'm saying, I guess. Right.
Yes.
So that's the important thing. So
It is.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on the socials and on the podcasting?
Yeah, so you can follow me at ATG Cast on social media. That's where to follow me, but you can follow you can go to the sswnetwork.com, which is our website for our Around the Galaxy show, which is our interview show where we've spoken to everybody from social media voices to authors to super fans to actors, and we talk about their sort of Star Wars experience. We kind of say it's that capturing that magic moment when two Star Wars fans meet for the first time. Then on Friday nights we do our live show called Force Connect on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@the SSW Network. And Force Connect, we call it sort of sports radio talk for Star Wars fans. We pick a couple topics of the week and then we allow people to call in and we hear what their opinions are, and we do it that way. And then we also have a show called Podcast of the Wills, which is more an occasional show. We take a deep dive. We just recently, Nick, my co-host, did a deep dive into the Indiana Jones saga. So we usually pick a topic there and we take a deep dive. But best thing to do, follow me at ATGcast, and I'm putting links up to all that stuff all the time. So we can talk Star Wars online too. That's cool.
Excellent. And all those links will be on the podcast notes as well here. And again, thank you so much for your time, Pete. Look forward to hearing more about you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I could do this for days. This is great. Thank you.
I know. That's the problem. It's always trying to what is the appropriate length for this? Is 3 hours too much time?
Right. Yeah. When I do my podcast, I'm always like, are they still interested? Because I could keep going.
Yeah.
But no, this was great, man. I would do this again in a heartbeat.
So that's what Star Wars means to Pete Fletzer. What do you think is the best way to introduce new fans to the franchise? Do you agree with Pete that when Anakin killed Admiral Trench, it was a Major Vader moment? And by the way, Major Vader moment is going to be my new Twitter handle, I think. And is there a Star Wars Funko Pop character that you have to get all of? Get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2, and the letter U. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give a 5-star rating and review. And remember, the Force will be with you, always. Hi, this is Dave. And before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2, and the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.